Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's weekly tips and tricks video. This week we're going to be covering how to get your skelmesh and animation from Maya into UDK, as well as quickly cover how to set up this idle animation, which is similar to what you may see on some type of NPC type character in-game. So okay, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so here we are in Maya, and what I've got here is basically the character that you just saw rigged to a straight FK skeleton chain. Now I've gone ahead and actually done all the smooth binding and painting the weights for all this. So in order to get your skelmesh out and have a proper skelmesh inside of UDK, this is really all you need is a character or a mesh that has been bound to a skeleton. So since it's already been done, what we can do from here is just go to File, Export All, and then I'm going to navigate to a folder where I want to place this, Scene Files. And since we've got FBX export selected, I'm just going to say Thief Girl Skelmesh. And then under here, what I'm going to want to do under the options is, since I'm not going to be setting up a separate material, what I'm going to do is just under the embed media, I'm going to turn this to on. And then that's just going to take the textures with it. So from here we can just go ahead and click Export All, and then we should be good. And then what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go ahead and open the animation that we're going to be using in this little tip as well. So back to my course here where I had that animation example, and then I think it's the idle animation we're going to use. So what you'll see here is when this loads is we've got basically an idle animation. Let me turn off that layer. And regardless of whether it's mocap or keyframe, we just got an idle animation that's just going to loop. And let me just go ahead and adjust the frame range real quick. Okay, so what you'll see is we've got here is we just have this idle animation. It's all been baked down to the skeleton, like it started to say, regardless of whether it's mocap or keyframe. What you're going to need is to have all the animation on the base joints here of the skeleton with none of the actual controls in the scene still. So once you have this, what we can do is we can just go do the same thing. We can just go to File, Export All. I'm going to navigate back to the folder where I want it. See Files, Export. And then just say Thief Girl Idle. And then under your options, just make sure you choose to include animation. So, if we wanted to bake the animation and choose some of these options here, we could, but the animation's already been baked down to the skeleton. So really all we need to do here is just choose animation, and then I can click Export. And then we should be good. So from here we can go back into the editor and then kind of start to hook things up. Okay, so here we are. I've got the editor open, and I just went ahead and opened the Epic Citadel map that ships with UDK. And the first thing we're going to want to do is go ahead and import the skelmesh. So I'm going to go up to the generic browser up here, and I'm just going to click Import down here, and then I'm going to navigate back to where that file is. And this is the skelmesh here. I'm just going to click Open. And it's going to give us some options what we want the package name to be. I can just name this Thief Girl. I can keep the Thief Girl skelmesh name the same. And then when you scrub down here under the options, just make sure that you have Import Materials and Textures both checked. And then just click OK. And then what it's going to do is just going to kind of load all that stuff in. And then what you'll see from here is if you double click the skelmesh, bring this over here into the recording window, we now have our character inside of UDK here. And as you can see, if I click this little button, it's going to show all the skeleton, and you'll see that we've got all those joints with it. So from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create an anim set and begin to bring in the animations, or the animation for this example, I should say. So from here, we've got our new packages down here, which is where the Thief Girl package was created. And then if I just go ahead and right-click, way at the top here, it's just getting a little cut off from the resolution of this recording, but you'll see at the very top it says New Anim Set. So if you just click that, I'll just type Thief Girl _ Anim Set. There really aren't any options here. Just make sure that if under the factory Anim Set is selected, just click OK. And then what we're going to see is by default we're just going to have this BSP block in here. So what we need to do first is change out to our skelmesh. So we can do that by selecting the skelmesh that we just imported and then going back to our anim set, and under the mesh tab, just under the default skelmesh section, just go ahead and click that green arrow, and what that's going to do is that's going to import the skelmesh, so as long as it's still selected. So from here, what we can do is we can go to File, Import FBX Animation, and then let me go back to my source assets, and we're going to want to choose the Thief Girl idle. And what we'll see now is we have her idle animation if I kind of scrub through it. But it's kind of hard to tell with this, but one thing that we're going to need to do is under the Anim Set tab, there's this Anim Rotation Only checkbox, and what that's going to do is that's going to say that every single joint in this hierarchy can only accept rotation values. But the problem with that is the fact that on our hips joint here, we actually have some translation moving back and forth. So if we have that checked, what's going to happen, you'll see as I scrub through it, we're going to get a bit of foot sliding. And what's happening, that's because it's kind of counter animating what's happening with the feet since it's all been baked down. So when you bring this in or any animation into an anim set, you're just going to make sure you uncheck that, and you'll see that it actually moved position a bit. And what happened from there is you see that we now have this red warning saying that, you know, because of it's been moved and this anim rotation has been unchecked, we now have to recompress the animation. So we can do that by going up to Animation Compression and Animation Compression Settings. And we have a bunch of different settings here, and animation compression is basically what it does is it changes the accuracy of your animation curves on all of these joints here. And when you begin to get into game development, what's going to happen is you're going to start to see that depending on the level or what's loaded into that certain checkpoint of your game, there's going to be a certain amount of memory that's allotted for things like textures and lighting and, you know, scale meshes and animations. So compression is going to sometimes be your friend and sometimes be your enemy, because you're going to have to recompress sometimes to different settings in order to get a different quality of that animation. So since it says right here that we're going to need to recompress it, what we can do for this example is just recompress at a high setting. And for here, we can just go to Remove Trivial Keys, and Float 96 should be fine. I can just click Apply to Sequence, and it'll kind of tell you how much you saved for compression on this specific sequence here. So now that we've done that, you'll see that we get that little error that goes away. And from here, we can go ahead and begin to hook this up in the actual level. So I'm just going to move these off to the side. But we're going to need to make sure that this scale mesh is still selected right here, because we're going to go ahead and add that to our scene right now. So let me go ahead and find a spot. Maybe go out here and have her, I don't know, let's say she's standing in this little hallway section right here. So with that scale mesh still selected, I can just right click on the floor and say Add Skeletal Mesh Thief Girl. And you'll see that she gets added right here. And then from here, what we're going to need to do is go into her properties and set up a few additional things about what animation she's playing and what anim set she's kind of calling from when she wants to play this animation. So the easiest way to go ahead and find these animation features here, the animation properties, is just to type anim into the search field. And that's greatly going to reduce the amount of searching that you're going to have to do in a bunch of these rollouts here. So for starters, what we're going to see is there's this field right here called anim sequence name, which is basically anim sequence name. And that's where we're going to want to add the actual name of the animation that we want her to play. So if we go back into our anim set real quick, go back to my animation tab, I can just click this and hit Control C, and then drag this back off, and then hit Control V in here. And what we're going to need to do next is tell it what anim set it's going to be playing from. So if we scroll down here a bit, you'll see that we have this section right here called anim sets, and you'll see that you have the possibility to add multiple anim sets that the character could be calling from. Now granted, we only have one anim set, so I can go ahead and delete this second one that I created. But from here, what we're going to want to do is add this anim set in. So let me just go back to my content browser here. I can select on that anim set that I've created. I can import that. So now it knows when I say, hey, play this animation Thief Girl Idle, it knows that it needs to play it from this anim set here, or else it's not going to know where to look for that animation. So once we have this all set, we can go ahead and remove this. And there are two more things we need to check. And that's right here where it says plane, and then right under below it where it says looping. And what that's going to do is that's going to do it as you would expect it to do. It's going to ensure that that animation plays in game, and that when it's done, it just kind of continues to loop through. So let's go ahead and look at this in game. I'm just going to close this down, and then I'm just going to hit the play and viewport button right here. Okay, so what you see is we now have our skelmesh animation in game. It looks like she could be moved a little closer to the floor here. That shadow seems to be offset a bit, but that's kind of the fine details of hooking this up. But what we've got is we've got our skelmesh in game and playing our idle animation. So, well, that concludes this tips and tricks video. Thanks again for watching 3dmotive.com.